Hello, everyone. This is Mickey Feldman-Simon. I'm the founder of I'm Back at Work, and I'm very excited to have you all here with us today for the presentation, Top LinkedIn Tips for Career Reentry with Leanne Rod. And before we get started, I want to make sure that everybody can navigate their webinar control panel. And it may be now obstructing the view of the presentation, and it's very simple to move it out of the way. The first thing you can do is click on the orange button, on the orange arrow, and the orange arrow that you see will either open or close the webinar panel. So here you see it where it's closed up, and if you click on the orange button, it will expand it like the image on the left. You can also drag it and move it out of the way. You just click anywhere at the top of the webinar panel and then just drag it to the side so it's not obstructing the view of the presentation. In the last 5 minutes of the webinar, we will have a Q&A session. If you want to ask questions, just click on the gray questions bar and then type in your questions in the blue rectangle right underneath. So before I pass it on to Leanne, I'm going to turn my video camera off, and I am so excited to have you here today, and I hope you join us in upcoming webinars. Leanne, over to you.
Thank you, Mickey. It's really nice to be here today. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to everyone today about LinkedIn tips. I'm the Associate Director of Talent for Flex Professionals Boston, and work as one of 6 people in the Boston area for Flex Professionals, and have had a career in learning development. So after my degree, I spent 20 years in various industries in both learning and development and human resources, with a focus on tactical job search skills. So LinkedIn is one of the things that I really love to talk to job seekers about. And on a personal note, I'm a mom of 2 teenagers and have had several career reinventions along my own path. And the thing that has really moved with me have been my transferable skills, regardless of industry. And so that's one of the real powers of LinkedIn, and the ability to communicate that. So I've definitely used it to do that. I'm going to turn my video camera off so we can see the slide. There we go. And then before we jump into the tips, I want to tell you just a bit about Flex Professionals and why we're relevant to this conversation. Flex Professionals was founded about 9 years ago by 3 moms who, after career breaks for caregiving, were frustrated by the lack of meaningful roles with flexibility. Between the 3 of them, they knew hundreds of moms and dads with great experience and credentials, and who could provide value to companies if they could have some flexibility on hours or location, or a combination of both. And at the same time, they knew small business owners who really wanted to find affordable expertise that could help them scale as their businesses grew, and so put the 2 groups together and formed Flex Professionals in 2010. Since then, we've grown by leaps and bounds. The last 3 years have been on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies, and really are driven not only by that growth, but also by our mission on advocacy and infrastructure. So advocating with companies through strategy for helping them find roles that can be part-time or have flexibility. And then also staying current on hiring trends to help folks who are re-entering discover what those best practices are, and even maintain some of their professional value and grow that while they're on career break. So before we go into tip number 1, I want to have a broad conversation about LinkedIn as a job search tool, because I think the biggest question is, do you really need to invest the time? It does take a little bit of work to develop your LinkedIn profile if you haven't started yet. And the first checkbox for yes, it is worth it, is the power of networking through LinkedIn. Networking is key for job searching at any point, but especially in a digital era. About 85% of jobs are filled through networking, and sole use of online job boards result in a very small percentage of hires. This is especially true for returners because of career gaps. And the gaps don't always allow for your value to translate on paper. Second is that recruiters use it and they check it. So they use it in two ways. One is to find candidates, certainly for new roles, and then also to look at candidates who are being considered for positions. We all have a digital footprint, so we may as well use it for good. The third checkbox speaks to being technically current. Having a LinkedIn profile demonstrates a level of technical ability and currency, or at least a perception of currency, that can be important when re-entering the paid workforce. And lastly, is that it's part of a personal brand. So it helps you tell your story a little differently than a resume does, and that's especially important when you're trying to communicate a transferable skill set. Okay, so the first tip is getting ready, related to getting ready to edit. This is really similar to editing a shared document and turning off all of the small edits before you release your final version. If you've been editing your LinkedIn profile and you haven't done this, don't worry. We're going to walk through this and show you how to do it as you move forward. I do want to mention that there are several screens in the presentation where I'm going to show a screen recording and then walk through steps to make a change in LinkedIn. And I would invite you to watch that now and then come back later if you want to repeat the screen and the steps at your own pace. So starting from the main LinkedIn page, which you can get to by navigating to the blue square in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to go to the upper right corner to the Me circle, which may be a picture of you or a gray silhouette if you haven't uploaded a picture yet. And then you're going to go to your settings and privacy area to view how others see your profile and network information. On the left-hand side, under how others see your LinkedIn activity, you're going to click on sharing profile edits and click on changing profile edits and toggle that to no. Mine was already turned off, but if it's turned on, you're going to turn that to no. You do want to remember after you're done making your edits to go back and turn this on, because LinkedIn is an engagement platform, and so you eventually want people to see your updates, but for now we're going to leave that off. Tip number 2 is related to your photo that you use. If you have a gray box, a good intermediate step is to take an amateur photo with a really good camera, either a digital SLR or even some of the current cell phones that have a portrait mode can work as an intermediate step. But you want to try to work your way toward a professional photo, and there are a couple of reasons for this. As you know, humans, we engage with images. You're creating your first impression if someone's meeting you online for the first time. And the professional photos really focus on a subject's eyes, and that's what we connect with. So I want to show some examples of before and after, all relatively professional photos that were made better by having them professionally taken. So you can see that most of them are good to start with, but the second image is better. I do want to comment in the lower left-hand column that if you have a picture that is somebody else in it, you may want to trim them out or take one without anybody else in the photo and make sure it's of you, not of any pets or a logo or anything like that. You really want to make it a human image. The third tip is related to customizing your URL, making it your
Leanne, we can't hear you right now. Leanne? Seems like we are having a technical difficulty and we've lost Leanne for a moment. Leanne, let's give her another moment. Hopefully she will be able to come back.
Okay, it looks like,
Leanne, we need to go back. For some reason, we did not hear you for just a moment. So if you can just
okay,
go back and
sure.
talk about the end of the last slide.
Okay, no problem. Where did you lose me? Or where did I lose you?
Go back a slide. And we didn't hear the beginning of the customizing your LinkedIn URL.
Okay, great. All right, I'll start there. So the third tip is related to customizing your LinkedIn URL, making it your own. That URL is your internet address that you share so that people can easily find you on LinkedIn. And when you sign up for LinkedIn, if it's not customized yet, LinkedIn will assign a combination of letters and numbers, usually your name with a series of numbers afterward, which if you want to share on something like a resume header is okay, but you can make it cleaner and a little bit more memorable by customizing it as in the second example. So again, I'm going to walk through how to do this. So to start, again, we're going to make sure that we're on our primary dashboard. Go to the Me icon. And we're going to go to View Profile this time. And in the upper right-hand corner, there's a section called Edit Public Profile and URL. So we're going to click on that. And then it brings up another screen where we can actually edit the URL. Same area, but if you see the blue pencil, anytime you see a blue pencil within LinkedIn, it gives you the ability to edit that information. So you can highlight the name that LinkedIn assigned to you automatically, which will have the numbers in there, and type in the name that you'd like to use. When you click Save, LinkedIn will let you know if that name is available. If it's not, something you may want to try if you have a common name is to include your middle initial, your full middle name. If you have even if you have a hyphenated name, you can include both. You can also add punctuation. So Jane-Smith, Jane_Smith to see if something is available. If that is not, the next step that I would take is to try to incorporate your profession. So for example, if Jane is an engineer, she might say Jane Smith engineer, Jane Smith doctor, something to indicate her profession that is available. And then you want to think about what you're sharing. So the only thing I would discourage you from doing is including something like your birth year or a combination of your birth month and day, just because that's sensitive or private information for you. All right, tip 4 moves into creating your headline. Your headline is the text that immediately falls below your name on your LinkedIn profile. And you want to think about your headline in terms of what you want next. It may not be the last job that you had, but you want to think about what it is that you want next. LinkedIn will automatically default to your most recent job title. But you want to think about this as an area to market your value and your ideal job. How would you differentiate yourself from others in this field? What do you want to move toward? So you want to think about search terms. You can get inspiration from current job titles that interest you if you've been looking. And you've got about 120 characters. So this can become a really quick and powerful elevator pitch. These are just some examples of things you might want to include that could be important in your job search. It's a very specific skill area like sales leader. If you're in operations and management support, indicating that it's C-level gives that a little bit of a different spin. Or if you've got degrees or credentials that are important to your field, that could also be really helpful in this section. Oftentimes, people returning to paid work are wanting to do something that's different than they did before. It might be a pivot or it might be a 180, but this headline area is a great space to be really specific about what you're looking for. These are some examples. The first two, Adriana and Karen, are both returners. Adriana has not been a business operations manager in the past, but based on her combination of experience, that is what she wants to move toward, and she's qualified to do it, so she's listed that as her headline. Karen, on the other hand, has done both of her jobs before. She's been a project manager in the medical device field. She really wants to move toward clinical research and felt that including her project manager position in her headline would help add credibility to what her future search will look like. And the third example is someone from my own organization, Jen Voss. She's got her title and her company listed here. This is a little bit different from folks who are in a job seeking mode, but Jen's title is really about being discoverable by people that she might meet for speaking engagements or business development and professional networking. Okay, so tip number 5 is relating to crafting a summary. Your summary is your block of text that is partially shown just below your headline. So what makes a good summary? It's different than a resume. It's more personal, still professional, but it's written in either usually in the first or third person. If first person doesn't feel authentic or right to you, third person is fine, but you want to make sure that you are giving yourself a chance to tell your story, show some personality. And you can look for inspiration from other profiles. I've reached out to people that I know before and asked to borrow some of the wording from their profile, from their summaries. And for most people, that's a compliment. Some people may say no, but I think most people would be fine with borrowing and rewording some of that. And to remember that it's not a resume. So you really want to look at how you're telling your story, especially if you're transferring skills from one job field or industry to another. I'm going to show an example of this, but another area that you want to pay attention to is what appears above the fold. You have about 2 sentences that will appear before it cuts off into the read more three dots. And you want to make sure that what you're showing is compelling enough so that someone will want to read more. I'm using Mickey Feldman Simon's profile as an example, and you can see that she's got some great information in her first 2 sentences of her summary that really talk about her background, what she's doing now, and how that fits together. So really compelling and would make me want to read more about her. Tip number 6 is related to your current position, even if you don't have one. LinkedIn, within LinkedIn, there are many different search areas. Your current position is one of the primary search fields, that recruiters, and when I talk about recruiters, I'm talking about independent recruiters who work for a company like ours, which is a staffing firm, as well as in-house recruiters who might work within an HR department. We all use LinkedIn to find people, and the current position is one of the primary search areas. So if you're not currently working in the paid workforce, you do want to create a placeholder, but you want to make that a real job title. And if you can finish this sentence, so I'm a professional blank, I'm just not working as one right now, that's a really great starting point. So you might say, I'm a professional trainer, I'm just not working as one right now, or I'm a professional instructional facilitator. You want to be recruitable. That's your end goal. You want to be aware of what current titles sound like in your field. So again, a great idea to do some research to try and figure out what those titles are, so that you're coming up when people enter typical search terms. And then I'm going to show you an example on the next screen of where this is and how to do it. But the next section that comes up is the company box. And since it's not a real company that you're working for right now, you want to list a descriptor. So a couple of descriptors you may want to think about are available or seeking new opportunities. You can also default to your industry. So if you are in engineering, your company could be listed as engineering opportunities, and that's fine. The next area in your current position description is a description box. This is an area where in a past job, you would have listed your accomplishments. In this one, you're going to list your top skill set that you want to use as you move forward and the things that are going to help you get hired in that field or in that job. So I'm going to show you an example. We're going to go back to Karen, who's looking for a job as a clinical research associate. And you can see that she's got that as her title. She has seeking new opportunities in the company space. And then in the description, she has bullet pointed the reasons why she would be good at this job. I do want to just say one important thing about editing this area of LinkedIn, because we've talked about your headline, and if you've gone through the trouble of creating a really great headline, you don't want it to disappear. LinkedIn, in trying to be helpful will replace that headline when you add an experience, unless you turn that feature off. So as you're editing, in the area that lists update my headline, you want to toggle that checkbox off. And then you'll keep your title that you created earlier. And just an editing tip in general for LinkedIn, it's a great idea to keep all of the things that you're creating, whether it's your headline, your summary, job descriptions, anything that you work hard to create the correct wording for. It's a great idea to keep that in a Word document. You're going to have some iterations on LinkedIn. It's a living document. And you may want to go back at some point and reuse something that you've done in the past, and LinkedIn does not save that for you. So it's a great idea to keep it in a separate document. Tip number 7 is related to describing your past roles. We saw what Karen did in her placeholder, but in this section, I'm talking about paid work positions that you've had in the past. And like a resume, if you've done recent work on your resume, then you've probably spent some time updating your past job responsibilities to be more outcome-based. LinkedIn is the same. You really want to emphasize your achievements in your past roles. So you want to ask yourself, what was the impact of the work that I did? And I want to show you a couple of examples. So in my role, this would be a very job description type statement that I coordinated job search workshops for job seekers. It's okay, not great. Better than that would be to quantify it if I can. So I'm describing it a bit more, designed and delivered. I'm quantifying the number of job search workshops that were created on an annual basis. And then I'm telling about the impact. It increased the company outreach to key customers by 25%. So when you're comparing the two, you can see what the outcome is in the second statement versus the first. It's got to focus on your long-term results versus the day-to-day, which might be more job description-like. And again, doesn't have to be quantifiable, but it's better if it is. The reason that you would do this in LinkedIn is the same for resumes. It really helps a hiring manager connect the dots and can help them envision you working in their organization and doing the same kind of work and having the same kind of deliverables for them. Tip number 8 is related to building your network. The broader your base in LinkedIn, the more engagement and connections you're going to have, and the better tool it's going to become for you. Whether you're looking for a job or networking professionally, this is true. So if you're starting out on LinkedIn, you want to search all of your networks for connections. And I'm including professional, but as well as personal and volunteer networks that you have to get to at least 50 current connections. These are people who, if you sent an email or a LinkedIn message or even picked up the phone and called, would know who you are, would respond to your email, etc. For every first connection that you have, they may have 100 or more first connections of their own. So if you can get to 50 connections, if you can imagine that, you start to build the space of 5,000 second connections, which can become really powerful. When you're connecting to folks, you want to make sure you customize your message. So in this example, I'm looking to connect with Alexandra. And below her information on her LinkedIn, the head of her LinkedIn profile or heading is a connect box. So all of these screens pertain to the desktop version. If you're working on a tablet or a phone, your buttons may be in different areas, but this is the desktop version. So we're going to click on connect, and then LinkedIn will have a pop-up that asks if you want to add a note. You click yes on that. And then you include a personal message. So if you met someone at a networking event or at a speaking event and want to connect afterward, it may be a day or two before you send it or before they read your message. And it's always great to remind them how you connected to make it more compelling for them to connect with you on LinkedIn and expand your network. So how is this helpful? I want to talk about first and second level connections just for a quick minute. Let's say, for example, that you see a job at Acme Paper and you really want to apply for it. So you're going to leverage your LinkedIn tool, your network through LinkedIn, to help you on that path. In this example, Alexandra may have worked at that company in the past, or maybe she's currently working there. So you're reaching out to her and saying, hey, I just saw this job listed at your company. What do you think? You know, I'd love to apply for it. And maybe she'll even submit you because there might be an employee referral incentive for her to do that. So that automatically can get you higher up in the pile of electronic resumes that people are going to look at. As a second connection, let's say that somebody that Alexandra knows works at the company. You would leverage that same start. You're going to connect with Alexandra and you're going to say, hey, I noticed that you're connected to Steve, who works at Acme Paper, and I'd really like to apply for a job at the company. Would you be willing to introduce us? So Alexandra, who knows you personally, then can lend some context to you as a candidate to her connection. Tip number 9 is related to being discoverable. So I mentioned that there are search fields within LinkedIn. There are a lot of search fields. This is a really direct way to let recruiters know that you're open to a new position. And this is true for people who are currently not working for pay or people who are in a job and looking for something new. So we're going to let LinkedIn do some of that work for you. I'm going to walk you through how to turn that on. So again, we're going to make sure that we're starting from our main dashboard and then go over to the Me button again and back to Settings and Privacy. Then on the left menu, you're going to see Job Seeking Preferences. And directly to the right of that, we're going to click on Let Recruiters Know You're Open to Opportunities. And we're going to turn that on. And then if you see below that, there's blue text that says Update Career Interests. We're going to go ahead and click on that because you've got an area where you can add as much or as little information as you'd like to let the recruiters know about you and your search. I will say that I would encourage you not to be afraid to be really specific in what you're looking for. Specific could be the type of job. It could also be the location, the hours, the size of the company. But the more specific you can get, the more you're going to find the right fit for yourself. So you can enter some text. You can enter some job titles that you might consider. These are just a few examples. And then below that on this screen are location and hours. So you can toggle on and off working remotely. You can choose your hours, full-time, part-time, contract, even internships and volunteer. And below is where you can enter the size company that you'd really like to work with. Again, this is all optional information, but the more you can put in here, the better. Okay, the next tip is around engagement. And this is really about being visible and active on LinkedIn. The more engagement you have, the more likely you are to appear in someone else's feed as they're looking at LinkedIn. Like other social media platforms, LinkedIn has an algorithm that they use to put information in front of people. And your engagement can help drive that algorithm. So you want to make it a habit. It is a social media. And to use it really effectively, you want to be on it often. And you want to be engaged versus passively watching. A couple of ways to engage are similar to Facebook, for example. You can share information. I would encourage you, if you're sharing information on LinkedIn, because it's a professional network, to share it with some context. So either a comment about why you're sharing it, or even pulling a key quote out of an article that might be interesting for someone to see before they decide if they're going to read it. If you do have some good external media feeds, if you subscribe to either industry or other news channels that would be interesting to your network, you can link to those articles by copying and pasting the URL into your post. And certainly if you have original content that is professionally based and related to a job that you'd like to have in the future, absolutely include that in your feed as well, and include the link to where it can be found in its original content if you have it. Another way to engage is to join groups and follow thought leaders. Groups might include alumni networks, they might be industry groups. And then thought leaders are generally leaders in general. They could be within your industry or beyond that. But by engaging in groups, you're reaching people that you might not know yet, and following and possibly reposting and commenting on thought leaders or industry leaders. Again, you're showing currency and you're showing your engagement in the professional process. So next steps, like your resume, I mentioned LinkedIn, your profile is a work in process, so don't wait. You don't have to wait until it's perfect. Once you're 75, 80% of the way there, turn your profile updates back on so that you can let your network know when you're online and engaging, and again, raise yourself up in that algorithm. And then keep up with the connections. So you have your initial push to get out to 50 plus connections, but keep that going. So as you meet people, it might be in a job search networking group, it might be at an event that you attend. Ask people, would it be okay if I connected with you on LinkedIn? I've seen people do it in person at a networking event, so they get it done right there in the room, and that makes it really easy. And again, just pay attention to some of those volunteer organizations that you've connected with. If you've been working outside of the paid workforce, those can be really fruitful connections as well. If you are looking for part-time or flex schedule role and you happen to live in the DC or Boston areas, I would encourage you to do two things. Upload your resume on our website. There's no cost to do that. We don't share it with employees unless we ask you first. And it is the first place that we go when we get a new job posted to search and see if we have anyone who might be qualified or interested in the job. You can also like us on Facebook, Flex Professionals Boston. It's a live feed as jobs are received. It's the same as our website, but it gives you one place to go. So you can see jobs as they're posted and indicate your own interest in them. And then also, if you are interested in in-person workshops and you happen to, again, live in the Boston or DC areas, those are ongoing. We offer them seasonally. Our Boston area workshops right now are in Arlington. We happen to be doing LinkedIn this week, which is a bit of a repeat of today, but it goes into more depth and has a discussion aspect. There's also a headshot session that day, and we have networking and interview tips coming up locally. And if you are in the Virginia area, we have resumes coming up on February 11th. So please either email me or check out our website to get more information on either of those series. So with that, I want to thank you again for your time. I've enjoyed being here, and I want to hand it back to you, Mickey.
Thank you, Leanne, for all those valuable tips. We have people typing in questions now, and I invite you to type in some more. I also want to invite you to join I'm Back at Work's free women-only Facebook group, where we support each other throughout the job search process and throughout the career. Daily tips for success and open positions that we hear about. So I really encourage you to join that. Just look up I'm Back at Work on Facebook, and it is the Facebook group. I also want to invite you after this webinar, if you want to go on LinkedIn, you feel free to reach out to me. Look for Mickey Feldman Simon, send me a note that you're on the webinar, and I'd love to connect with you as well. And our first question, Kim is asking, please clarify what to do when 75% done with profile. You said turn on something.
Yes, so if you remember at the beginning of our tips, the first one was to turn off your sharing your edits as you make them. And there's a screen grab if you want to go back when this is posted to see how to turn those off. Is the same thing that you would do to turn them on when you're mostly done making your edits. So turning that on and off, the purpose of doing that is that anytime you make an update on LinkedIn, it sends a notification out to your network that, okay, Leanne has just updated her education. Leanne has just updated her volunteer experience. You may or may not want your network, if you have an established network already, to see every update that you're making as you make it. So you would turn off those profile sharing edits as you're making them, but then turn them back on. And I really wanted to emphasize that there is no perfect profile. So as soon as you get to the point where you feel like you're stopping, you've made a lot of edits, and you're going to start connecting to your network, that's the time when you want to turn your sharing back on because you're engaging.
Thank you, Leanne. Annie Mae, sorry, is asking, if I see an interesting post on Facebook, how do I put it on LinkedIn? And Annie, if it's a link to an article, you just copy that link. So it's basically just copying it across, and then, like Leanne recommended, make some sort of a comment about it, or add a quote from the article. Anything you would add, Leanne?
I think that's a great tip, Mickey. The platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they don't always work well with one another, but probably by design. So if you can find that original URL and bring it into LinkedIn, I think that's the best route.
Okay, we have another question from Anne-Marie. How do you communicate that you're open to pivot your career in your headline?
Could you repeat that? That you're open to what?
To pivot your career in your headline.
Okay, so you know that you're pivoting, but I think you'd ask, does anybody else really need to know that I'm pivoting? What you want to do is use your headline to express where you want to go. So you're using that as a future job. It may or may not be the last job you've had or any job that you've had in the past. But then to support that, you're showing what your skill set is and why you could be valuable in that role. You can use your LinkedIn summary to talk about where you are on your career path. This is the same as the profile section on your resume if you've done some resume updating, where you might include a really brief sentence without going into much explaining that you're transitioning back into full-time work, or you're transitioning back into the workforce after a career break. Because there is that gap, and it's a great way to address it without overemphasizing.
Right, I completely agree. So, okay, we have lots of thanks. Thank you for the really helpful information. So thank you again, Leanne. And I see we have more questions. Okay, it's more thank yous, lots of them coming in. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. I hope you join us in other upcoming webinars or watch some of the webinars on demand. Thank you again, Leanne, and I hope to see you all soon.
Absolutely a pleasure, Mickey. Thank you.